Marijuana, by the way, is now officially going to be on the ballot in Alaska. This is going to be really interesting. Can can young folks turn out enough of a vote, or is it going to be young folks? I'm noticing demographically a very interesting phenomena that the politics of the left is increasingly being driven. Well, let me start with the right, actually. The politics of the right are increasingly being driven by, and you can see this, by the way, if you look at the metrics for who watches Fox News, who listens to right-wing talk radio, who watches MSNBC, who listens to left-wing talk radio. The politics of the and also you look at the demographics on the internet. You know, who's reading the right-wing blog sites, who's reading the left-wing blog sites. The right-wing activism in the United States is being driven by and large by people over 65, in fact, in large cases, over 70. The generation that came of age in the 1950s or earlier. The tail end of what was called the Greatest Generation. And by people, largely white people, in the age group of roughly 30 to 50. That kind of middle age group. Those are your conservative activists and your Tea Partiers. Progressive activism is being driven by and large by the boomers, which are people 55 to 65, more or less, or 50 to 65 right now. And increasingly by people who are under 30. And it's almost like every other generation, it's like it skips a generation. I find it fascinating. So this marijuana, pot legalization being on the Alaska ballot my guess is that it's not only going to bring out the boomers who are more left and in favor of pot legalization, and the young people who are more left and in favor of pot legalization. But it may bring out a lot of that middle group, the 30 to 50s, who are more, quote, independent or conservative, more likely to listen to Rush Limbaugh, for example, than me. And in some cases, I mean, we're talking, 47 to 53%. These are not huge swings, but they're measurable swings. That group tends to identify itself as libertarian rather than as Republican. That's the group that Rand Paul is speaking to. That's the group that Ron Paul was speaking to. Those kind of middle-aged working folks, by and large white. And the libertarian faction is in favor of decriminalizing pot too. So that leaves everybody under 70 basically, or at least a majority of everybody under 70 saying, yeah. And these coalitions that are forming, even though they may not be overt coalitions like they show up at the same place in the same room in the same meeting, but they vote the same way, I think are increasingly going to constitute a really significant force in the American political discourse. And I think that you're finding that these three groups, the under 30s, more progressive, the 30s to 50s, more conservative, the 50 to 65, more progressive, that you're going to find these three groups collaborating on things like gay rights, on things like, and again, leaving behind the folks who are the greatest generation, the 70-plus folks who came of age in the 1950s when gay people, there was an ongoing debate about whether Liberace was gay, right? For years and years and years. Or at least there seemed to be a debate in the mainstream media. Or just no discussion about it at all. Just as a kind of for example. That over 70 generation, there's a lot of good Democrats in there. But there's also, that old-fashioned kind of Barry Goldwater Republican group. My dad would have been in that group. And so they're going to vote against marijuana legalization. They're going to vote against marriage equality. But then you get some interesting issues like, do you want a fracking well in your backyard? Or have you noticed that the weather has just gone flat out bat guano crazy? Might that have something to do with our having put 350 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere since the Civil War? And it's picking up speed, the rate at which we're throwing carbon into the atmosphere. So there's that. I toss that out.